The chair recognizes the honorable member for Yamacraw.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to move for the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas, if the public finances of the Bahamas does not substantively improve, the government's debt rating will be further downgraded by international rating agencies. And whereas, the government recurrent revenues were forecast to be $1.5 billion, while recurrent expenditure was pegged at $1.7 billion. And whereas, there is expected to be a GFS deficit of 462 or 5.4% of the GDP, while government debt will be 5.2 billion or some 60% of the GDP during the fiscal year 2014-2015. And whereas the government tax structure is too narrow and inadequate to support all of the government's services, commitments, and responsibilities. And whereas the government has unveiled a package of tax reforms which is intended to secure adequate revenue base in support of modern governance, establish a tax structure that promotes economic efficiency and stronger economic growth, and make the tax system more equitable. And whereas the government has implemented initiatives to improve revenue collection by modernizing the Customs Department, Real Property Tax Department, the Road Traffic Department, and by creating a central revenue agency. And whereas, to achieve these objectives, the government proposes to introduce value-added tax, or VAT, in January 2015 at 7.5%. And whereas, value-added tax is a consumption tax that taxes both goods and services, unlike the present system that taxes only goods. And whereas, a number of international and local organizations have recommended that VAT would be the preferable tax for the Bahamas. And whereas, when value-added tax is introduced, the government intends to reduce customs duty rates on a number of goods, reduce excise tax rates, and eliminate business license tax and hotel occupancy tax. And whereas, over 140 countries have introduced VAT as their primary means of generating revenue. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this Youth Parliament supports the introduction of value-added tax at 7.5% to assist in the broadening of the revenue base of the Bahamas. Madam Speaker, I rise on behalf of the prominent people of Yamacraw, that big voice in the east of New Providence. I say thank you to that constituency for electing me and entrusting me with this responsibility. I say thank you to all Bahamians listening by way of live television through the length and breadth of the Bahamas. I also would like to take this opportunity to say hats off to the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, in particular the Division of Youth, for hosting this Youth in Parliament session, showing that they are fully committed to the development of the youth of this great nation. Madam Speaker, value-added tax is no doubt a very timely topic, seeing that it is something deeply affecting our country. There is an increasing debt. There is a need for tax reform, and there is a need for increased revenue to supply the needs of the Bahamian people. In life, Madam Speaker, when there is a problem, it is human nature to find the most effective solution. Madam Speaker, 3 major issues, but one simple solution, and that is value-added tax. As it was said, 140 countries have implemented VAT. And Madam Speaker, I have not heard of a third world war or any civil wars due to value-added tax. Why decline it? Madam Speaker, we in the prestigious constituency of Yamacraw believe that VAT is indeed necessary and can assist in revenue increase. As a growing and developing nation, the demands and necessities of the people are ever increasing. The taxes that are in place now have been in existence for decades and one time ago could have met the demands and cover government expenses. However, we must come to the realization that this is the 21st century and things must change. VAT will tax both goods and services, which in turn means an increase in revenue and the ability for government to more efficiently govern. Value-added tax is coming January 1st, 2015. It makes no sense being against it. Your views are respected, but we must accept it and look at the positive effects and prepare ourselves for its coming. Madam Speaker, there is a cry for an increase in social services benefits. There is a cry for improvements in education and health services. How can the people continue to cry for these improvements and cry for development, but do not want to make the necessary contributions to aid in this transformation? That is the way to go, Madam Speaker. Many other forms of taxation have been reviewed, and looking at the pros and cons, VAT is still the better choice. I challenge any member of this honorable House to rise in opposition of this tax. Stand up and oppose it. Madam Speaker, with the implementation of value-added tax and the increase in revenue, the government will be allowed to improve the education system, build more classrooms, employ more teachers, and increase the scholarship fund. It will allow for the public health system to be improved. It will allow the provision of medical attention more efficiently. Social services funds can be increased to further assist those families that are in need. Madam Speaker, all of this and more just because of the simple implementation of value-added tax. Madam Speaker, VAT will supply the government with the revenue it needs to finally make that much-needed change in BEC. Many people in Yamakwa is tired of it, Madam Speaker. We are tired. They are tired of sweating, and my young people need to study. They need to get homework done and prepare for school at night. How can the electricity be off? But again, let me emphasize this. Let me repeat it. But again, the funds are needed to make this change, and VAT will provide those funds. Madam Speaker, in a country where unemployment is at its highest amongst our young people, it is imperative that the government increase revenue to provide jobs and facilitate in further education, both locally and abroad. Madam Speaker, let me make this statement to my young people. It is something that I am passionate about. Indeed, there are exciting opportunities abroad. However, when this great country has benefited you and assisted in your development as a whole person, it is only right that you in return make contributions so that the future generations can benefit and to ensure the sustainability of this great country. Madam Speaker, as it clearly states in the resolution, and I quote, "And whereas when VAT is introduced, the government intends to reduce customs duty rates on a number of goods, reduce excise tax rates, and eliminate business license tax and hotel occupancy tax." Madam Speaker, it also states, "And whereas the government has implemented initiatives to improve revenue collection by modernizing the Customs Department, Real Property Tax Department, Road Traffic Department, and by creating a central revenue agency." Madam Speaker, isn't it clear that a new tax is not just being implemented, but those that are in place are also being improved? Madam Speaker, we must also be mindful that this will lead to the Bahamas' eventual ascension into the World Trade Organization, which will open our country to a wider range of markets, trade opportunities, and investment opportunities. More investors will be attracted into the Bahamas, and more investors means what? More money flowing through the country, and more buildings being built, and more infrastructure being created. And yes, my people, the more jobs for Bahamians, and especially our young Bahamians. Madam Speaker, with the implementation of VAT, we, the people of Yamakwa, expect to see significant economic improvements in Family Islands as well as economic development. As you can see, Madam Speaker, we are not constricting ourselves to the development of this magnificent constituency, but also the entirety of the Bahamas. Family Islanders will no longer need to come to New Providence for certain necessities. Rather, persons will have the option of migrating to Family Islands, having the same opportunities all throughout. Hospitals, tertiary level institutions, 5-star airports, 5-star hotels, increased agriculture, and so much more will be available. But like I said, Madam Speaker, and I reiterate it again and again, it cannot be said enough. This can only happen with the increase in revenue. And with the increase in revenue, we need value-added tax. VAT will bring the underdeveloped islands on par with the more developed ones. And you no longer will have to say that only a few people on the islands, because persons will now migrate to the family islands because the same opportunities are readily available. Madam Speaker, it will not happen in one day. You will not go to bed tonight and wake up tomorrow to see skyscrapers. But over time, step by step, you will see the improvements and major changes in our economy. Next youth month, Madam Speaker, October 2015, we will see bigger and better things. They may even make it 2 youth months in October and November. They may even make it a youth year where they celebrate the youth of this country for the entire year. But like I have said over and over and throughout the entirety of my contribution to this honorable house, it can only happen if we implement value-added tax. Madam Speaker, I continue my contribution by saying youth development will ensure the continuity of existence of this great Bahama land. It is no doubt that we the youth are the future. Look at it this way. With the whole country contributing to increased revenues, youth programs can be introduced, developed, and improved. Through this, we can empower our youth and enable them to become productive citizens of this country. Madam Speaker, look at the progression from an economic improvement to a social and cultural and youth improvement and development.
Honorable member, your time has expired.
Madam Speaker, with all due respect, I would like to move the motion that my time for this contribution be extended to a mere 2.5 minutes. Can I have a seconder, please?
Yamakro, I guess, an additional 2 more minutes. Only 2 minutes. Only 2.
The motion has been seconded.
Thank you, Honorable House, and thank you, Member for Golden Isles. Madam Speaker, the people of Yamakro hold the opinion that this implementation of VAT will foster better spending habits amongst our people and encourage saving. It will further encourage the people to focus on what they need rather than what they want. Let me give you a scenario, Madam Speaker. A customer needs a loaf of bread, which costs $3.55, and wants a soda, which costs 75 cents. Total A with the wanted soda, $3.55 plus 75 cents plus the 7.5% value-added tax.
In the absence of time, Madam Speaker, I'd like to respect the motion and second.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Killarney. Order of point interest.
Point of interest. In the essence of time, I do see it fit that we continue on with the rest of the opinions that has been brought this afternoon for the Parliament to hear. In respect to the honorable member of Yamakro, however, everyone needs a fair chance at this afternoon.
Is there a seconder?
The honorable member of Killarney.
The motion has been seconded. Honorable member of Yamakro, your time has expired. Is there a seconder? But the chair recognizes the honorable member for West End, Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Parliamentarians, audience guests, good afternoon. Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion. I rise to voice the concerns of the people and especially the youth of the illustrious constituency of West Grand Bahama, the constituency that is also home to the capital of Grand Bahama, known as West End. Madam Speaker, I call attention to the fact that the environment has been subject to dramatic transformation within the development of Caribbean societies. I further state that the countries which fail or show themselves as being too slow to adapt or to change their environment run the risk of falling behind in the race of development, and at worst, becoming a failed society. Can the Bahamas afford the risk of continuing down a path of self-destruction, or will it implement value-added tax to circumvent self-destruction from happening? Madam Speaker, the answer to either questions, I'm not certain of, but I do know that we need VAT, and we need it now. The country has a very narrow tax base that allows it to compete effectively with territories in its immediate neighborhood, which are all colonies of Britain, and which have economic structures similar to that of the Bahamas. However, unlike them, the Bahamas is evolving a pattern of expenditure associated with its assumptions of all of the obligations of nationhood. Hence, for a country whose economic activities and performance are influenced to an extraordinary degree by its participation in the global economic arena, it is inconceivable that the Bahamas will be able to indefinitely maintain this odd man out status where relating to a rule-based international economy is concerned. The Bahamas is the only country in the Western Hemisphere which is not a member of the WTO. But the relevant issue here is therefore not as to whether the Bahamas should become a member of the WTO, it is that as to how best the nation should prepare and negotiate the terms of its participation in this critical institution. Mr. Speaker, value-added tax has garnered much debate over the last few months. In fact, several songs were written with a melodious tune that is against the implementation of VAT. Most people are against VAT because they believe VAT is too complicated. Also, they are against it because they believe it's inflationary and regressive, taking more over the pockets of the poor. Nonetheless, one must agree that VAT being indeed regressive is one of the strongest arguments against VAT. In Grand Bahama, the economy is slowly making a turnaround. Hence, because of this, residents question that why VAT is being introduced now when the economy is not steady versus when the economy has returned to a reasonable health. Mr. Speaker, if I may reference the Barbadian experience, whereas VAT was introduced in Barbados under more challenging circumstances that currently face the Bahamas. In Barbados, VAT was used to replace 11 forms of indirect taxes and 44 kinds of fees as a means of raising revenue. Nevertheless, despite the challenges, the IMS publication, The Modern VAT, said listed Barbados as a success story. According to an article written in Freeport News, economist Lang stated that the income the Bahamas has been producing has not paid for its own operation when the Bahamas became an independent nation. The taxation system that is now in place, it needs to be refurbished. It has been said that 40% of the government revenue comes from taxing imports into the country. However, it is rather obvious that with this taxation, it cannot indefinitely fund the day-to-day operations. As Bahamians, we want the best hospitals, we want the best schools, the best infrastructure, the best everything. However, but when it involves an indirect pinch into our own pockets, we prefer to ride the back seat. Anne Bishop said, in everything in life, it has a price. And as Bahamians, we must embrace the realities of our present moment and those that relate to our moments going forward. This country is a community to which all citizens and residents belong, and there is a cost to operate this country. Mr. Speaker, we can continue to borrow money and increase our deficit and suffer greater loss, whereas we are unable to provide basic products and services, or we can create a proper taxation system to reduce and ultimately relinquish the borrowing, which can aid in helping fund the day-to-day operations of our country and help reduce the deficit. The Bahamas is at a critical point in its decision-making. It's either do or die. It's time for us as a country to make a decision where we can benefit from it in the future. Jay-Z said, Rosa Parks sat so that Martin Luther King could walk. Martin Luther King walked so that Barack Obama could run. Hence, as young Bahamians and people of the Bahamas, we should be willing to suffer a dent in our pockets now so that the children coming can suffer a pinch in theirs. We, the people of West Grand Bahama, specifically the youths of West Grand Bahama, we support VAT. However, we support VAT with the implementation of an increase in scholarships and other grants for young people. Just as the countries in Finland and Singapore are known for their good education, overall high student achievement because of funding from VAT and from implementing strategies whereby all students can attend college for free, we, the youth of West Grand Bahama and the future of the Bahamas, endeavor to see that by implementing VAT, we can have a direct link, a benefit from taxes that will be levied against us. In essence, Madam Speaker, we cannot support VAT if there is no direct link for the youths of the Bahamas. We want a certain percentage from VAT allocated to the development of the youth of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Hence, we know that building such a national consensus goes beyond the need for adoption and the support of technical position. The decision which are being taken by the government and the people of the Bahamas in the near future will in all probability change the structure of the economy forever. But I believe it is a cause in which the government of the Bahamas and the people of West Grand Bahama and the Bahamas at large are more than capable of winning. We need VAT, and we need it now. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. It has been moved and seconded that the following resolution be agreed. Whereas, if the public finances of the Bahamas does not substantively improve, the government's credit rating will further be downgraded by international rating agencies. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this youth parliament supports the introduction of value-added tax at 7.5% to assist in broadening the revenue base of the Bahamas. As many. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Golden Isles. Sorry, honorable member.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, before I get into my speech, I want to make it known that the public also knows that the VAT value-added tax is not a panacea for the Bahamas. And I say that because VAT is known by experts around the world as a regressive tax, and it will hurt the poorest and the less wealthiest of this nation, which is the majority of the people in this nation. So all this talk about is going to do this and do that, it is going to do a lot once the government funds it, does the allocation of the money properly. But I just want the public to realize that it will not be so good as being told by other members in the House. But today, Mr. Speaker, this Honorable House brings to debate VAT to the table. VAT is functional in excess of 120 countries. Some Caribbean countries include Barbados, Dominica, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago. The Bahamas is one of the wealthiest Caribbean countries in the world, the most envied economy in the region. Now, putting initiatives in place to have a tax reform through VAT, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, due to the increased debt, government seeks to introduce VAT to the economy as a tool to lower dependency on foreign borrowing annually. The economic effects value-added tax will impose can be described as frightening, especially in an economy that is exogenously determined. And for those that don't understand it, that means that we depend on external factors, that determine how this country's economic standing is. The Bahamian foreign debt has seen some sharp increases over the last 3 years with the massive borrowing habits of successive governments. The Bahamian government debt in 2011 was a little over $3 billion. In 2012, a total sum $3,370,000 plus dollars. Madam Speaker, the Bahamian economy is long overdue for tax reform and draws many opponents and proponents for its implementation. With the looming $550 million deficit, Madam Speaker, the economy is getting better, however. With Bahama coming on stream in the tourism industry and smaller hotel companies coming about, and the increase in job opportunities, the economy would truly be getting better. Madam Speaker, value-added tax is a regressive tax. However, if nothing is done to reform the tax regime, then we would be putting the future generation of the Bahamians at risk. But before I take my chair, Madam Speaker, I'm a proponent and an opponent of the VAT in respects that it is something that needs to happen, but I also recognize that there are some things that we could have done better instead of having to go to VAT. And I believe in some respects that this is something that just the government is trying to go towards because it's better to implement than other things like income tax that would be less harmful on the poor. And I'm talking about people over here like Jack and Susie. So, as I take my chair, Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas has always been a blessed nation. That may be new to the ordinary way of doing things, but at the end of the day, this will only benefit the country in the long run for our children's children. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member for Golden Isles. As many. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise on behalf of the great people of East Grand Bahama to convey my contribution to this year's resolution. George Washington Carver once said, "Education is the key to unlock the golden door of freedom." Many of the constituents whom I serve are shackled by a lack of knowledge, gripped by the fear of change, and are trying to discern from a sea of opaqueness the government's rationale for implementing the VAT tax into the current dynamics of our economy. I have heard their cries, and I will attempt to give them the necessary keys to be freed from the bondage of uncertainty, for them to cope with the realities of our financial situation. Madam Speaker, the resolution states the government tax structure is too narrow and inadequate to support all of the government's obligations. Madam Speaker, I am in total agreement with this point. I find it necessary to highlight former Minister of State for Finance, Shivago Lang, as he simply states the facts. Mr. Lang said, our economy is, conservatively speaking, about 70% goods, yet the government raises 70% of its revenue from 30% of its economy. Madam Speaker, that doesn't make much physical sense to me. That is not a sound economy. Moreover, some 40% of government revenues come from customs. The reality is a growing state with increasing costs of operation cannot look to the smallest sector of its country to carry the bulk of the cost. Hence, there is a dire need, in my opinion, to strengthen our tax structure if we wish to continue enjoying our standard of living and for this standard to improve moving forward. Madam Speaker, the Bahamas has relied heavily on an economic model that is over 64 years old. the Stafford Sands model. This promoted the Bahamas as a year-round tourist destination. Tourists bought into this vision, Bahamians embraced it, and investors flocked to our beautiful shores. Subsequently, the Bahamas enjoyed a sustained period of prosperity. For some, they called it the good old days. To think that just 14 years ago, unemployment sat at 6.8%. But as of 2013, the unemployment rate has risen to a staggering 16.2%. This is an indication that perhaps tourism alone is not enough. It is not going to be the engine that carries us forward into the foreseeable future. I believe that it is time we diversify the economic portfolio of our country. If I may, Madam Speaker, if the public finances of the Bahamas does not substantively improve, the government's credit rating will be further downgraded by the international rating agencies. I often ponder, are my fellow colleagues who oppose the VAT bill aware that these agencies play a vital role in garnering foreign investment for our country? Recently, international credit rating agency Moody downgraded the Bahamas' credit due to massive debt and a soft economic growth. This is a troubling prospect. Now, on top of high crime rates, which have demonstrably affected our tourist arrivals, we are now faced with the threat of credit ratings decreasing below investment grade, which would both decrease foreign investment incentives and increase the cost of borrowing. My fellow youth parliamentarians, we need VAT. But while I am a proponent of the bill, I do have some concerns that I will try my best to address quickly. One, I have perused the resolution, and at no point I see where VAT is going to be used to tackle our current debt situation. It is only going to be used to add revenue, to support the governance, establish a better tax structure, and to make the tax system more equitable. My question to the government is, what portion of VAT is going to be used to tackle this debt? The government stated they intend to reduce custom duties as they adopt the VAT tax. The operative word here is intend. So we do not know when, in fact, this will actually come to pass. As a member for East Grand Bahama, the College of the Bahamas, Northern Bahamas campus is within my jurisdiction. It is known that the government has cut COB's subvention. The government has cut COB's subvention. Madam Speaker, I believe that cut, education, and college should never be used in the same sentence unless you are cutting a check. Unless you are cutting a check to invest in the future education of our youth. As a citizen who will be paying VAT, I ask the government, what portion of the tax is going toward, one, the premier tertiary institution of this nation, as well as all the other institutions, educational institutions throughout the breadth of our country?
Honorable member, your time has expired.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
As many. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Seabreeze.
Speaker, Madam Speaker, honorable members of this great house, to the entire Bahamas that is tuned in, good afternoon. I am pleased to represent the great people of Seabreeze to speak to you on VAT. I have to admit that VAT seems confusing and a bit scary, because obviously no one wants to pay more taxes. But before I start bashing it, I decided to do a little research and try to understand it better. So I want to start with the question, what is VAT? VAT is the abbreviation for value-added tax, which will be charged on most forms of consumer spending, both goods and services. Madam Speaker, it seems as though no one except the government is in favor of this value-added tax. Persons from the financial sector, the business community, and the general public have articulated disadvantages of this value-added tax. With so many controversy about VAT, I must ask the question, Madam Speaker, if so many people are in opposition to VAT, then why is the government still proceeding with it? The government will always try to do its best to make decisions that will help and not hinder the country. Indeed, the value-added tax debate has been an unbalanced one, meaning it has only been looked at from a negative perspective. However, upon careful consideration, I have concluded that value-added tax is the most suitable form of taxation for the modern Bahamian economy. Madam Speaker, VAT is needed because the Bahamas is in the process of joining a number of international agreements, including the World Trade Organization, which deliberately avoid using customs because it's a barrier to free trade. Thus, the Bahamas must minimize the rates of custom duties, which will therefore cause the revenue earned from this tax to drop sharply. Custom duties are our largest tax, and depletion of this tax will prompt the need for an alternative tax source. This is precisely why we need value-added tax to compensate for the loss of custom revenue. Madam Speaker, instead of focusing on the shortcomings of the current tax system, we need to focus on strengthening and improving it. There is still time before the implementation of VAT. We need to create a culture of compliance where every Bahamian citizen contributes to the Treasury by paying their fair contribution. This is true of business and citizens alike. Many people berate VAT because it is complex and requires much recording and accounting. However, if the Bahamas is to develop into an industrial nation and begin exporting, then this is something that the Bahamian people must get accustomed to. Currently, the Bahamas is highly dependent on tourism and banking. However, the government has taken many initiatives to revive and expand agriculture, which can be the foundation for manufacturing. This happens in most countries that collect VAT. Agriculture is a primary industry. At the moment, there is no major agriculture industry. Since these foods will be produced in the Bahamas, VAT will be applied at each stage. Thus, the government will further encourage the production in order to generate more revenue. Furthermore, the Bahamas will be able to export surplus goods, and the government will receive VAT tax on this as well. Madam Speaker, the Bahamas has always been praised as a tax haven. Consequently, we have always been attractive to foreign businesses who desire to operate outside their countries in order to avoid the highly excessive taxes on their income. If the Bahamas were to implement income tax, then it would discourage creativity, entrepreneurship, and foreign investment. Income tax is normally about 33%, but VAT is only 7.5%. Furthermore, other than the administrative costs, the businesses are not paying VAT, but merely collecting it from the final consumer and remitting it to the government. Thus, VAT encourages entrepreneurship, which will in turn create jobs and add to the economy. Paulo dos Santos once said, and I quote, "VAT has been particularly strong in small island countries with populations under 1 million, unquote, end quote. The Bahamas perfectly fits this description, as we are a population of approximately 350,000, and we are a small island country. The reality is that the Bahamas, or any other country of that matter, will never find a tax that will please everyone. The only thing that the Bahamian government can do is to aim to find the most suitable tax. Is VAT perfect? No. Should it be introduced January 2015? Definitely not. Does VAT suit the modern Bahamas? I say without a shadow of a doubt. I give a resounding yes. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Asmini. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Bain and Grantstown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to represent the splendid and notorious people of Bain and Grantstown. Value-added tax is a type of consumption tax that is placed on the product whenever value is added at a stage of production and at final sale. When a television is built by a company in Europe, Madam Speaker, the manufacturer is charged a value-added tax on all of the supplies they purchase for producing the television. However, Madam Speaker, when the television reaches the shelf, the store, the consumer who purchased it may pay the value-added tax that is placed on the item. Although VAT may be a major concern for the Bahamian people and may have lots of Bahamian people chivalry, it is time for the Bahamian people to understand that VAT is needed to improve the public finances of the Bahamas. Madam Speaker, VAT is like any other tax. It is a source of revenue for the public spending, and it simply generates a lot of money. According to www.startinbusiness.co.uk, VAT is quite a big proportion of the UK government income. The government of the Bahamas has enforced initiative to amend revenue collection in the Bahamas by creating a central revenue agency, modernizing real property tax, road traffic department, and customs department. However, currently, the majority of the government taxes are gathered from custom duties. The problem with this, Madam Speaker, that custom duties are only paid on goods and not services, and services make up 91% of our economy. Secondly, Madam Speaker, customs duties tie up merchant capital by requiring them to pay up front. Madam Speaker, I believe that this is a splendid contrived way to broaden the tax base in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. However, Madam Speaker, according to www.bahamasgov.bs, VAT Bahamas, VAT and the consumer, VAT will not be paid on basic bread basket items, and as well, VAT will not be paid on medical service and educational service. However, VAT will be paid on goods such as clothing, furniture, household appliances, and on services such as legal and accounting services and property or casualty insurance premiums for those parliamentarians who needed to know. Dialogues about VAT have circulated throughout the Bahamas and have given many Bahamians a defective expression towards value-added tax. However, Madam Speaker, it is clear that there is nothing wrong with the implementation of value-added tax in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. However, Madam Speaker, I believe that the Bahamas, the Bahamian people, and especially the Bahamian young people, should become more educated about VAT in the Bahamas. Walkabouts, talk shows, school visit, youth program visit, a VAT conference, a community meeting on VAT. VAT is like a retail tax, but is collected in pieces along the production chain, and it is coming to bear the you, me, and the Bahamian people, empowering youth, securing our future, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member of South Beach.
Bahamas, Madam Speaker, let me first by saying I apologize for my outburst in the first session, and I trust that you are forgiven. The current government and the past governments have both exhausted their means of increasing economic growth, due, of course, to poor economic planning. This is witnessed by the outrageous increase in our national debt, the increasing level of unemployment, and consequently the introduction to value-added tax. Good afternoon, Bahamas, Madam Speaker, and members of Youth Parliament. My name is Justin Gray. I am a young aspiring businessman with a detail cleaning company by the name of Targedu Cleaning, and I am representing the South Beach constituency for change. Change, Bahamas, begins with us. It begins with us. We must put Bahamian people first. By doing so, we discuss value-added tax, more commonly known as VAT, which is a consumption tax on goods and services to provide revenue for the economy. What does this mean for a young or mature businessman like myself? Fellow Bahamians, Madam Speaker, our government is the characterization of rational self-interest. VAT is a plan of the government that sought the easiest way out of decreasing the national debt and to enhance the credibility of their party by overlooking the average household, which attains a mere $42,000 per annum. We need a government that is going to fight for the people by thinking long-term, not short-term. We need a government that will deliver a trade surplus. Please, can we get one? We don't need another deficit. We need a government that invests within its economy, opposed to that of foreigners. With VAT introduced, this will lead to a higher trade deficit as the government will seek more means to spend more money on foreign investments. In recent news, you can fathom for 1 second how $10 million is unaccounted for. Can you do that for me? Madam Speaker, Bahamas, I wish that I would have gotten some of that money. I would have hired a few workers. But no, ponder Bahamas on how many of our tax dollars, when we pay, will be part of a disastrous scheme. Are we at fault for thinking like this, Bahamas? There was a recent documentary released on Sir Lyndon O. Pinland, refreshing our minds of his journey and how he fought as our leader for our parents to bring the Bahamas at the door of independence. Those of age and others who have seen the film, can you remember and imagine what an unbelievable feeling aroused in the depth of your heart? Remember when you danced with people who you don't know because you were so filled with happiness, so full of energy. Today, I want us to join the movement that will see us through another lively breakthrough that takes you back to the joyful, glorious feeling as independence did. However, currently, we cannot think right now because we're at a crossroad where the two major governing parties of the Bahamas has brought us to VAT. According to the World Bank, the Bahamas had been rated as the wealthiest Caribbean country in 2013, and the article continues indicating that through tourism, our economy employs more than 50% of the workforce in this country. This is tremendous. If it was several years ago without VAT toggling the doorknob, my audience, tax with the greater burden is at our doorsteps and about to enter. According to the Department of Statistics, there was an increase in the number of employed persons and a decrease in the number of unemployed persons, resulting in an unemployment rate of 14.3% for the country, indicating a decline over the 15.4% recorded last November. These figures are much likely to increase after the introduction of value-added tax. I stand before you to tell you the late Sir Lyndon Pinland did not give up on his people, he did not give up on his goal, and he did not give up on his nation as it sought independence, and neither will we as a nation requiring change. The Bahamas, as it may be a very wealthy Caribbean country, is not ready for such a heavy taxing implementation. We are still a developing, not developed nation, regardless however it may seem. As mentioned, tourists love the Bahamas for our sunshine and our sea. They leave millions of dollars in our city due to the free taxing system. As a former salesman in the marina and downtown areas, Your Honor, I move for the motion that I extend my time frame to 2 minutes.
Motion has been denied due to time.
Thank you, Your Honor.
As many. The chair recognizes the honorable member for North Andros.
Thank you. Tax his land, tax his bed, tax the table at which he's fed. Tax his tractor, tax his mule, teach him taxes are the rule. Tax his work, tax his pay, he works with peanuts anyway. Tax his cigars, tax his bears, if he cries, tax his tears. Tax all he knows, then let him know you won't be done till he has no dough. When he screams and hollers, then tax him some more. tax him till he's good and sore, then tax his coffin, tax his grave, tax his sword at which he's laid. Put these words upon his tomb, taxes drove me to my doom. When he's gone, do not relax, it's time to apply the inheritance tax. Speaker of the House, other representatives from the various constituencies, distinguished guests, today I, Shanton Evans, of the quaint settlement of Nicholstown, rise to make my contribution for the great people of North Andros. The introduction gives a clear and strong view of my position as to why I strongly disagree with the implementation of value-added tax, i.e. VAT, in our nation. In order to arrive at this premise, it was incumbent of me to clearly define the gist of this discussion. The Oxford Dictionary defines VAT as a tax on the amount by which the value of an article has been increased at each stage of its production or distribution. This added amount, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, is incapable of shaking and breaking our nation in a matter of months or fixing our present financial state. It will lead to less money, an increased poverty rate, loss of job security, a hike in food prices, increased crime, and higher electricity bills. Do not be alarmed, for our government that believes in the Bahamas has faith that value-added tax is a solution to this issue. However, real sharp treatment will be needed for the powers that be when gross domestic product declines by a whopping 2 to 3%, as further studies conducted by the National Institute suggest that gross domestic product is expected to decline to a range of 322 million to 483 million. Madam Speaker, I am still puzzled, dumbfounded. Maybe you can shed some light as to why members of this House was absent doing voting on such an important issue, or why our beloved Prime Minister has failed to make his clear position. This is because he himself knows that without a referendum, which has proven to fall on deaf ears in the past, leads to what DNA leader Granville McCartney calls the death of democracy. We, the people, must question our own intelligences if we agree with VAT, as electricity bills have already raised and will continue to skyrocket. How then will a single mother of 4 be able to afford to keep her lights on when she is employed at Wendy's? As a consumption tax, the primary population infected are consumers. The Tribune reported in June that in 2 years, the number of Bahamians living below the poverty level has increased from 9.2% to 12.5%, and households living in poverty jumped from 5.3% in 2001 to 8.7% in 2013. With income at a standstill and the purchasing power of the Bahamian dollar and wages destined to decline, the article by the National Institute concludes that elderly and retired individuals with lifetime savings are most adversely affected because the typically highest consumption period of their lives is at this time. In my opinion, the ideal alternative to VAT would be income taxes. This allows for individuals to be taxed based on the salary they make. This is the ideal way to ensure people are taxed based upon the reality of what they can afford. Additionally, government spending on travel costs should be decreased, which would allow for more money usage in industries that require funding. Many of the so-called business trips taken by our representatives are often bombarded by a party of 4 to 5 individuals living a debauched lifestyle with an apathetic attitude towards unnecessary spending. Neglecting this and implementing VAT would only lead to the middle-class Bahamian men and women becoming low-class or no-class Bahamians. Ladies and gentlemen, our country is faced with an ever-growing deficit. Unemployment is at a continuous rise, which has resulted to an economy slowly crawling its way to disaster. VAT adoption is most definitely not the answer to the alleviating our current debt issue and will only make more room for disasters waiting to happen rather than bringing life and restoration to the foundation on which our economy is planted. You say value added. I say value taken away. Ms. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member from Montague. Excuse me, I'm sorry. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member from Iguana.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, tax and duties in the form of import, tax and duties in the form of import and export duties, edited tax, stamps duties, and tourism-related taxes constitute some 60% of the total government recurrent revenue. Unlike most countries, however, we do not impose personal or corporate income taxes, nor do we have a broad-based consumption tax. The government's revenue base is extremely narrow and ill-suited of expanding the needs and demands of a modern-day society. Madam Speaker, I am not against the implementation of VAT within this country because a reformed tax system is therefore essential. And indeed, the need for it is becoming more urgent each passing year. What I am opposed to is not VAT in the Bahamas, but VAT in the Bahamas come January 1st, 2015. Madam Speaker and honorable members, I am appalled at the economic incompetency that our country now sits in. A country that is just now recovering from one of the greatest recession and is now being slapped in the face by the very same people elected to lead us into financial freedom. Is the Bahamas ready for that? A question that has bewildered the people of this country. I am humbled at the opportunity given to me by the distinguished inhabitants of Meguana to assume this role as their representative on this day. And in this magnitude, I am sure that they are in agreement with me when I express my robust opinion that while we do need a reform tax system, given the proposed date of January 1st, 2015, the Bahamas is not ready for that. If we were to take a gander within our society, the introduction of yet another levied expense at this particular time poses a great hazard on our society. Implementing a system, in my opinion, in regards to formalities, the Bahamian people not given adequate time to grasp what it is that they are preparing for, not educating the Bahamian people of the extra side that they are now about to add to their already overflowing plates. Madam Speaker, this is an injustice to the Bahamian people. But come January 1st, 2014, this country has to bite the bullet and get with the VAT program. My heart goes out to the single mother in Meguana who has to face the struggle of harvesting cascarilla barks just to make ends meet, or the family island fathers who have to go and plant and plow just to find crops to put on the tables for their families. I propose that firstly the government rethink the proposed date, implementation of value-added tax in the Bahamas, and in so, Madam Speaker, the possibility of running a value-added tax system on a trial run. Yes, I said trial run, honorable members. A phase that will allow the operation of VAT for a period of at least 6 to 8 months. Given these months, our society will get a feel of what it is that they have to be prepared for. Also, for the government to be able to watch the way in which the proposed value-added tax will affect the Bahamian society economically and financially. Honorable members, if after this phase our country finds itself still sinking, then we are in grave danger. We are already wrangling and succumbing to the cost of living in the Bahamas. I would love to know if our leaders have properly prepared and taken into careful consideration the possible outcomes that is to happen when VAT is put into action on the proposed date of January 1st, 2015. Madam Speaker and honorable members, a very distinguished leader said, the lack of preparation presents for a piss-poor performance. It is howsoever competent and capable leaders prepared for the outcome of VAT on this Bahamas. I would hope that they are ready, be it negatively or positively. As I stated before, I am not opposed to the tax implementation of VAT within this country because a reformed tax system is therefore essential. But is our country and government ready? I hope that they would rethink the proposed date in which they plan to administer this very lethal drug to the Bahamas, especially if they are not ready for the implications and the side effects of said drug. Madam Speaker, this country is theirs to govern, and they are holding the gun.
We have established that the gun is going to be fired whether or not we like it or not. I just ask that they rethink the proposed date in which this bullet would be released. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many the chair then recognizes the Honorable Member for North Eleuthera.
And good afternoon to all. On this very day, I rise before you as a voice not only for myself, but for those that I represent in the wonderful North Eleuthera. In a government-influenced society where the national debt is approximately that of $5.1 billion, it would seem rather necessary from an economic standpoint to implement some reform that would aid in the removal of such a debt. Over the past few years, the Bahamas government has considered the introduction of VAT to the Bahamian society. The supposed purpose of value-added tax is to generate tax revenues to the government. But while in doing so, it is my belief that the VAT system rewards the wealthy and penalizes the poor. Both individuals will pay the same VAT rate even though the less wealthy person has less disposable income than his or her wealthier counterpart. Studies show that those below or closer to the poverty line tend to spend more on goods and services. According to the Department of Statistics of the Bahamas, the absolute poverty line within the last year was $11.64 per person per day, which translates into an annual poverty line of $4,247. This is the amount an individual needs to meet his or her basic necessities, which are a combination of the minimum expenditure needed for a nutritionally adequate diet, as well as the amount needed for basic non-food necessities. 12.8% of the population, approximately 43,000 persons, do not meet this minimum requirement of $4,247 and are therefore living in poverty. Madam Speaker, keeping in mind that this high poverty rate is without value-added tax. The level of poverty, therefore, has increased since 2001 when the Living Conditions Survey calculated the rate at 9.3%. And at that time, the poverty line was $2,863. Households living in poverty also experienced an increase from 5.3% in 2001 to 8.7% in 2013. The poverty rate varied by island, being lowest in Grand Bahama, where the rate was 9.7%, to the highest in Family Islands with the rate of 17.2%. By virtue of population size, almost 3/4 of the unprivileged reside here in New Providence, where the poverty rate is 12.6%. The value-added tax rate will be issued at 7.5%. It is my belief that if the Bahamian citizens consider the supposed VAT rate as one that will lead them into far too many expenses, they will discourage as much shopping in the Bahamas as possible and can very well decide to shop elsewhere in neighboring places, thus resulting in less revenue being poured into the Bahamas. Then what would be the true purpose of VAT, Madam Speaker, if Bahamians conducted business elsewhere? Also, the compliance costs for businesses that will be affected by VAT will be forced to file their returns. And to do so effectively, they must invest in equipment, systems, professional accounting, or legal fees that could be substantial to the productivity of their business. Now, these businesses that have been sustained for the past few years must adjust to these new implementations at the cost of extra unnecessary expenses. The government's said objectives for introducing VAT are to secure an adequate revenue base in support of modern governance, to establish a tax structure that promotes economic efficiency and stronger economic growth, and to make the tax system more equitable. To our country, VAT is relatively complex to understand, thus making it harder to gather support from the Bahamian people and resulting in unfair circumstances. In addition to the wanted revenue, economic efficiency, and growth, I believe this will not be able to happen in a country in which its citizens do not support the act of value-added tax in which the government wants to implement. Because of Bahamians wanting to further venture into foreign places in order to sustain themselves and extend the value of their dollar, the financial position of the Bahamas will inevitably digress. It is in my opinion that VAT will fail if poor planning was done prior to its introduction, and will fail if it does not have the full support of the Bahamian people, who are the ones who will generate the revenue that is essential for the progression and stability of the Bahamas. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Asmini. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member of Long Island.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise on behalf of the great, energetic constituents of the beautiful, majestic paradise called Long Island. We fully disagree with the issue of VAT and everything associated with it. Martin Luther King had a dream, but me, the honorable member of Long Island, has had a vision that VAT, and I repeat, will be the downfall of our magnificent country called the Bahamas if implemented.
Oh, man.
Value-added tax, also known as VAT, is a tax that will be implemented on almost all consumer goods and imported goods to the Bahamas from foreign countries. Madam Speaker, although a 7.5% tax rate may seem a small of a deal, it will be a large part in the determination process on whether our country succeeds or fails. And according to the government, they cannot ensure that this percentage will be stable. The possibility of it increasing is more than likely to happen. An already wounded country like ours does not deserve this. Why reach your hands into a man's pocket who already needs financial assistance? This is how I rationalize VAT in my mind, and this is how you should too, if you intend for your country to climb the ladder of success and not of failure. VAT is focused on one basic thing from my perspective, which is generating revenue for this country. Yes, indeed, this country needs money, but think about the devastation that is to come once this tax is acquainted. Think about the smaller man who packs day to day to make a living, running a food store or smaller business. Gas prices already at an all-time high. My Lord. What do you think will be the effect of VAT on this matter? I will go out on a limb and say this, but I'm sure there are others that totally agree with me. Take the quaint industrious city of Nassau, for instance, which is already overridden with crime. Don't you think crime will increase because of the lack of money and jobs that are already unavailable to our Bahamian citizens? I suggest we tackle one problem before we even think about adding or introducing a system that will and has already begun to create utter chaos. There are several other ways that this Bahamaland can generate revenue as a country without the implementation of VAT, such as broaden the field of agriculture, which already exists, and this in turn will provide more job opportunities for Bahamians. Enforce taxes to be paid that are already pending. As a Long Islander, I say with no shame that a lot of people are struggling, and it hurts my heart to see that most of the younger people are longing for the opportunity to work and support their needs. As I matured over the years, I've watched countless students graduate from the high schools whose parents aren't financially stable enough to send them to college, and they either end up from side job to side job or associated with the unhealthy part of life. For example, drugs and alcohol. Madam Speaker, without youth in our nation, our future will have already been eradicated. Yes, I understand that you say VAT will generate more revenue for scholarships and better schooling facilities and so forth. But I've also learned that a promise is a comfort to a fool, which the great member of parliament for Long Island is not. Our country deserves better. Our country demands better. And our country will have better. When there is a single thief, it is a robbery. When there are 1,000 thieves, it's taxation. Always remember that misery loves company. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The motion of point of clarification be moved.
Honorable member alluded to the fact that there's a possibility that the government may increase the VAT rate. Is the government intent to increase it? The 7.5% was just the introductory stage of VAT. The intent, I believe, was supposed to be 15% or a little higher. 15. 15? Yeah, 15 and 17. So it is just an intent. I just want the public to realize that. It's not going to be 7.5% forever. It's the government's intent. A few years from now, for it to be more than just 7.5%. Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Right Honorable Member. As many the chair recognizes the Right Honorable Member of Pinewood. Excuse me, sorry. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Pinewood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise on behalf of the young people in Pinewood to relay ideas on the resolution of value-added tax. Madam Speaker, youth parliamentarians, and to the entire Bahamas, good afternoon. It is often said that with every problem, there's a solution. With this being said, the most prominent problem in the Bahamas is that the government's credit rating is continuously downgraded by international rating agencies. And the only way to correct said problem is by creating our own revenue. What better way to do this than through taxes, rather than depending on external sources? This brings me to the topic of value-added tax. However, VAT is coming, we cannot stop it. However, there should be stipulations to the bill, in turn making it more convenient for us as Bahamians, and allowing us to allocate appropriately the revenue that is made from value-added tax. When VAT is implemented, it is guaranteed to create enough revenue to A, eradicate our country's debt, B, cover the country's annual expenditure, and C, create a surplus of revenue that can be allocated where necessary in the country, which has not been the case since the early 90s. Yes, all of these benefits are absolutely amazing, but when we put things into perspective, New Providence, Abaco, and Freeport is, New Providence, Abaco, and Grand Bahama is where the bulk of the country's population is located. I am now brought to question, why are we implementing value-added tax on the Family Islands? Our Family Islanders are already in a state of economic turmoil, whereas they already have an expeditiously rising cost of living. When all of this is put into perspective, it will be nothing but inhumane to implement value-added tax on the Family Islands. This will cause an influx of Family Islanders into New Providence, Grand Bahama, as well as Abaco, causing further overpopulation of these islands. And B, those who remain on the Family Islands will in turn spiral into poverty due to the fact that the supply of their goods and services will skyrocket while the demand will plummet due to the lack of a population. The revenue raised from implementing VAT in the capital alone will be more than enough to fund the nation. Now, as youth of this nation, I see it as a must that a portion of the revenue made be allocated specifically to one, education. This includes pre-education right up to tertiary education, allowing our youth to have a more suitable learning environment and better education opportunities. 2, sports. This is inclusive of developing our young athletes and providing them with scholarship opportunities as a reward for their talents. 3, youth. This includes offering grants to youth organizations so that they can effectively assist the youth of our nation like they are supposed to do. All of these things need funding because the youth of this nation must be groomed to take care of the Bahamas so that the Bahamas becomes and remains financially stable so that a problem like this will never be brought to the table again. Who are we to sentence our family islanders to a lifetime of poverty? And who are we to deprive our youth of the funding they need to run our country in the future? VAT will come, and unless these stipulations are kept in mind when VAT is implemented, VAT will be pointless. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for South Andros.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Madam Speaker, I make it clear I wish to stand in support of the resolution for the implementation of value-added tax. Today, value-added tax or VAT for most Bahamians has become recently a major phenomenon in the Bahamas. However, Madam Speaker, VAT has been around for many years since the French first introduced it in 1954 and has since been accepted by most Caribbean countries such as Barbados, Turks and Caicos, Grenada, and etc. However, just by the thought or sound of VAT, Madam Speaker, it sends us into a panic or uproar as if VAT was some type of derogatory word or disease. Madam Speaker, over 140 nations now impose on a VAT. That includes developing and transition countries, according to a study done by the Ministry of Finance and Department of Statistics. And I quote, "The rapid rise of value-added tax was the most dramatic development in taxation in the latter part of the 20th century and still continues." According to the International Monetary Fund and the Crown agents, there has been major flaws in our current tax system, for instance, and implications such as a low generating revenue that could be used to empower the present youth of our nation. So, Madam Speaker, we are not only speaking about VAT, we are speaking about tax reform. We are to consider tax reform and the implementation of VAT. We must inform our constituencies and not demonize this new value-added tax. The information we must give is there that we can be of other uses of VAT besides decreasing this nation's national debt. Furthermore, I wish to examine some aspect of the use of the money that can be made from VAT and spent on problems such as education and healthcare specifically, which is becoming increasingly important in our country's present and future. Madam Speaker, yes, the money that is gained from VAT can be of greater use to provide more scholarships, not only to study abroad, but to study at home. Access to a college education in our country must no longer be for the elite. Madam Speaker, if the implementation of VAT can be the answer to this problem, I say yes. Madam Speaker, who out of my colleagues in this room can benefit from a greater scholarship opportunities? Additionally, granted dividends from the implementation of VAT can fund more programs, especially on our family islands that require much needed attention. Madam Speaker, imagine a greater investment in sports, agriculture,
vocational and tourism-based initiatives, and value-added tax should and all will provide facilities that are needed to train upcoming leaders in areas of need. VAT applies to most sections of the economy that can greatly increase the needed revenue, which at the same time decreases our debt, therefore killing two birds with one stone. Madam Speaker, I have laid before the House my contribution and have outlined the benefits. The people are responsibility of the government, and the government must take charge. While medication administered may not be palatable by all provides, it charges to the cure. So, Madam Speaker, let us begin to take this 7.5% of dose of VAT to a better economy for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for the Berry Islands.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, have you ever wondered where the country's funds were going? Wondered how much debt could a nation accumulate? The national debt, defined by the Central Bank of the Bahamas, is the total indebtedness of the Bahamas government, including claims held by both foreign and local entities. It consists of two components, direct charges and contingent liabilities. Unfortunately, the national debt of the Bahamas has only risen over the past few decades. However, tough decisions, new rules, and innovative ways can boost this economy. Madam Speaker, it is too late to wish that we had changed the ways in which we spent the governmental revenue. It is too late, Madam Speaker, to regret choices we as a nation made in the past. Now is the time for solutions to our problem at hand. Now is the time to change slow economic growth, strengthen weak job markets, and lower inflation rates as a result of high debts. It is in my opinion that the government does not have a choice than to implement new laws such as VAT. Without this, the government can risk going into bankruptcy, and it cannot sustain itself with the current revenue. It is very important that a government properly educate its people about these taxes before they implement them. Without education, there will be room for assumption. With proper design, value-added tax can work better than other forms of taxation. It is believed that the successes of value-added tax depends upon proper planning and preparation, sound accounting practices, systematic organizational audit, fully acceptance of the people, trained manpower, sound ethical practices, and business ethical government representatives. I caution the government as it relates to the enforcement of its tax collection practices. Implementation of new laws and taxes without strong and constant enforcement will not yield the desired results. Madam Speaker, the discussion about value-added tax could have been avoided in its entirety if the citizens of the Bahamas would have paid the current various taxes. VAT permits the country to have more revenue, which will in turn decrease governmental loans and decrease the national debt. VAT proceeds can be used to add to the educational fund that was recently decreased. Proceeds can be used to improve sports, agriculture, and fisheries. It is one thing to implement taxation, Madam Speaker, but it is another to throw away the revenue on ridiculous salary advances, frivolous buying, and non-investing activities. Madam Speaker, I implore my fellow Bahamians, what is the problem? Why should we avoid VAT? VAT taxes both goods and services which provide more monies for normal sales tax. It is of my opinion that we bite the bullet now rather than be forced into the implementation of various taxes in the near future. Is VAT not transparent or neutral enough? Do we need some tax that does not reduce the cost of evasion and leave the door open for saving a little money? It is clear that the execution of VAT will provide jobs in the financial sector. When the government gets frantic to pay off national debt, it tends to allow the value of the dollar to plummet. This is bad for consumers. A weaker dollar results in rampant inflation. Do you want a weaker dollar? I do not. Madam Speaker, VAT is based on consumption and will only affect the consumer. The problem is, Madam Speaker, that VAT will leave less monies in the bank for hairdos, nail dos, and new clothes. Madam Speaker, we don't want to free up the funds to pay tax, but is quite comfortable with trying to impress our neighbors with expensive jewelry, clothing, or the like. Madam Speaker, we do not want to change, and this is why we are in the current position today. I submit that VAT will cost us as a people and government to prioritize our lives and force us to major in what is important and minor which is frivolous. The national debt is constantly on the rise, and value-added tax can be the answer to this problem. It's better to take the bulls by the horns now than to end up with a greater problem in the future. The Bahamas should ensure that its people have been properly educated about value-added tax and the ways in which it intends to bring about it. Without decreasing the country's debt, the economy can spiral out of control, adding more fuel to the fire and creating more unwanted difficulties such as inflation, higher taxes, weaker trading, and lower dollar value.
Honorable member, your time has expired. Thank you, honorable member. Thank you, honorable member. As many. The chair recognizes the honorable member of Cat Island.
As VAT will affect all Bahamians, there is no sure result or surety as to how much debt our country will pay off. It must be considered that many classes of Bahamians, such as retired civil servants, family island inhabitants, single-parent families, and the disabled, be considered. Yes, not to forget those who are more affluent and better off with high income, but what is to be realized is the difference in percentage in each of these classes. Madam Speaker, with the economic turmoil in our country, approximately 80% of Bahamians are faced with poverty and hard times. Those who can meet these needs without delay are the wealthy and better off ones. Yes, VAT will be a minor issue for them. The problem occurs when the percentage of this class is in small number. So far, the only solution presented to combat the negative effects of VAT on lower income households is to allocate additional funds to social services. However, this alone is insufficient. Ask yourselves these pertinent questions. Today, how many Bahamians live above, on, and under the poverty line? 2, how drastically will the number change post the introduction of VAT? For the less fortunate, it is not fair for them to be equally burdened on having the same charge on VAT. Madam Speaker, what I do recommend is to help eradicate this dilemma would be to tax citizens based on their economic standings, where the contribution will be based on some fixed percentage of income they receive. Yes, implementing some name or identity system and meeting precautionary measures will have some cost, but it's an idea that can be considered. VAT is not the only alternative to decreasing our country's debt. There are raw resources right here that we tend to overlook, such as aloe, which we can manufacture in forms such as skin, food, and hair care products. As our archipelagic nation comprises of over 700 islands and keys, the Bahamas has the ability to grow and trade crops. While tourism is still our #1 industry and continues to thrive, the Bahamian economy needs to be diversified. All in all, we the Bahamian people should not fear the value-added tax. The key to gaining progress through VAT is accountability. Must I reiterate accountability? The reason why other forms of taxation was not successful in sustaining our economy, Madam Speaker, is because no one is being held accountable for the loss of funds collected. We as Bahamians must cease and desist from the who you know syndrome. Uncle Paul and Auntie Sue are exempted from paying custom duties. John Doe doesn't have to pay property tax because he is so-and-so's cousin. Perpetrators of such incidents should be dealt with swiftly and effectively and as deterrent as possible. The public should be able to learn of the amount of revenue collected and its expenditure. No business or consumer that is readily capable of paying value-added tax should be exempted. This is a collective effort to move the country forward. As Bahamians, Madam Speaker, we either make ourselves accountable or we will be made accountable by our circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member of Centerville.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for acknowledging me. VAT come in. And VAT, what is that? They are all cries of the Bahamian people. Madam Speaker, again, I am a representative for Centerville. As Bahamians prepare for the arrival of VAT, their only concern is how are they going to prepare for it. Madam Speaker, I question every Bahamian under the sound of my voice. How will they prepare for VAT? And is the Bahamas even ready for such a change? My opposition may state that the Bahamas needs VAT to bring in more revenue. I agree with this statement, although I don't agree that the introduction of taxation is the correct procedure needed to bring forth more revenue. The Bahamian economy has been controlled by tourism for years and years, but there are other ways that this country can bring in revenue instead of relying on something as unstable as tourism. Especially now that we are being faced in economic turmoil and competition with other places that are tourist destinations. The Bahamas is a gold mine of natural resources that we can use to create avenue for revenue we desire. But as value-added taxes before us, we as a Bahamian people should band together and demand government spending transparency with the 7.5% that will be taken out of our pockets. Where's it going? Will it be invested in our future, in education, in social services, in our youth? These things I cannot answer. But now we can demand better services, better buildings, and more importantly, a better life for all Bahamians. Who will suffer at the hand of VAT? The same people who have to suffer when $100 or $200 go unpaid on their bills, or the people who owe millions of dollars and still can continue to live lavishly. Madam Speaker, my opposition may feel as though Bahamians are afraid of change, and I agree. Isn't it in human nature to fear the unknown? And I will stand for my people who are afraid of the unknown, afraid of the ignorance that we have on value-added tax. Taxation will not only change the way we live, but the environment of a tax-free Bahamas, which Bahamians and non-Bahamians have come to love, will be no more. According to CARICOM.com, the VAT tax is one of the most popular taxes in the world. In over 120 countries, some of those belong in the Caribbean, it was found successful. Even so, they weren't. And they found themselves repealing the tax. Because of three different things. 1, political commitment to repeal the VAT. Number 2, poor performance due to poor planning for VAT, introduction, and operation. Or 3, an inadequate and definition of registration threshold, which resulted in an excessive number of taxpayers to be administered. Change is inevitable. Fear of the unknown is expected. If we, as a nation, aren't ready for this kind of change, Madam Speaker, why present it? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Inagua.
On behalf of the people of Greater Nagua, who has allowed me to be here today, I call to question the issue of value-added tax subsequently set at 7.5%, which as of January 1st, 2015 will be implemented effective immediately, whether or not we are ready for it. Value-added tax, as you may have previously heard, is an indirect tax which is considered to be a broadly based consumption tax charged on the value added to goods and services. With the implementation of VAT, the government seeks to reform our tax system, whereas the country will be able to secure an adequate revenue base which supports modern governance, a well-established tax system which promotes economic efficiency, and a stronger economic growth. Also, a more equitable tax system whereby initiatives to improve revenue collection will be taken immediately as before mentioned. To be honest, there isn't much to be said about VAT that hasn't already been said. Madam Speaker, as one of the many youth of this nation, my biggest concern or biggest question has to be, where will the money go? Madam Speaker, with all of the money said to be collected as a result of value-added tax, my concern lies on whether or not the citizens of this nation will be able to benefit positively from this. More importantly, will the constituents residing on the various family islands, and of course our youths, will they be able to benefit directly from this? Madam Speaker, it is based on my view that the country is still in a state whereby there isn't proper finances. How do you think that the family islanders will be affected, especially the households of those who are struggling to make ends meet as it is? If the revenue gathered from VAT will not be used to benefit the family islands and more importantly our youth, then I cannot and I will not support it. I repeat, if the revenue gathered from VAT will not be used to benefit the family islands and more importantly our youth, I cannot and I will not support it. The family islands of the Bahamas are some of the most beautiful places in the world with so much great potential to develop into something so much more, yet they are continuously ignored. The same goes for our youth. There is so much untapped potential embedded into the youth, yet like our family islands, they are ignored. Madam Speaker, with regards to our family islands and youth, I propose that instead of tourism alone being the main focal point in this country, revenue gathered from VAT should be used to reestablish or to redefine a stable yet proper economic stance for each individual island by taking into account the resources already present on each island and marketing them in a way which produces a favorable and beneficial amount of exposure for each island. Regarding the youth, Madam Speaker, it is also based on my views that nowadays the youth are not being educated to the fullest extent. A fair portion of money said to be gathered from VAT should be definitely added back into the education budget, which was cut a few years ago. Doing so, education programs that facilitate the high number of students who suffer from various learning disabilities should be implemented effective immediately. The illiteracy level among the youths of this country is too high, and not because of the unwillingness to read or learn, but because reading is a difficult challenge for them, especially those who cannot read, period. Presently, schools are not readily equipped to deal with students who experience this difficulty, which is why needed special attention should be rewarded. After all, it is better to educate today for a better tomorrow. Lastly, value-added tax will be here, and sadly, there is no yes vote and there is no no vote. As of the new year, this country will no longer be considered a tax-free haven. So therefore, it is wise to prepare yourselves for the future, for what lies ahead in the future. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member of Southern Shores.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, colleagues, Honorable Minister Pricewell Forbes, spectators, Bahamians worldwide. According to the government of the Bahamas, value-added tax is an indirect tax, which is considered broadly based consumption tax charged on the value added to goods and services. It applies to almost all goods and services that are imported, bought, sold for the use of consummation. Controversially, goods exported, supplied to customers or abroad are exempted or zero-rated. Value-added tax will be introduced at a rate of 7.5%. Many years, our only form of generous amount of revenue would have come from duties applied by Bahamas Customs. But let's be honest, how many persons, including those in here, in this House of Assembly, has defrauded the Bahamian government by skipping and not paying their Bahamian custom tax? Just imagine the millions of dollars lost each year because of Bahamians defrauding our systems. VAT 7.5% fee is similar to what we pay in the United States of America, even though some states in America charge 8%. If we can pay duty and sales and tax in the United States of America, why can't we pay in our own country? Secondly, you have to realize that each year our national debt continues to increase. Let's look at each fiscal budget. We must continue to get monetary loans and to continue to keep our country afloat. Without the proper utensils, how can we run our country? Take a look at this. Persons call for government to cut back spending. Please tell me exactly where. Do you want us to cut back spending youth, sports, and culture? If we, the young people, are the future, should they shut us? What about national security? Our armed forces personnel needs boats, cars, bulletproof, as well as other resources to keep our borders and streets safe. VAT turnover will be at least $250 million per year. Could you imagine another income source? Straight Talk Bahamas wrote, international agreements. The government has signed on to various international agreements that will require us to do away with the tariffs within a certain time frame. For example, the EPA requires us to get rid of all tariffs on the EU imports by 2014. This shows us that we must now comply with the international bodies. If we wish to move forward and progress in the 21st century, VAT is essential and vital for our Bahamian economy. It is VAT that will turn our economy around. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for South Eleuthera.
No motion will be denied.
Madam Speaker, I thank you for acknowledging me. Good afternoon. Madam Speaker, it gives me great pleasure to address you, the junior members of Parliament, and the nation on the topic of value-added tax. Madam Speaker, here is the problem. The Bahamas is headed down the wrong path financially and is in need of some tax revenue. Madam Speaker, according to StraightTalkBahamas.com, based on research, there are 3 main reasons we need this tax, and I challenge the opposition to listen to me carefully. The government is spending more than they are making, and the gap has been increasing. 182 million 2006 to 2007, 361 million 2008 and 2009, and 550 million 2012, 2013. Number two, to broaden the tax base. Currently, the majority of the government taxes are collected from duties. The problem with this is that custom duties are only paid on goods, not services. And services make up, Madam Speaker, 91% of our economy. Secondly, custom duties ties up merchant capital by requiring them to pay upfront. Thirdly, international agreements. Madam Speaker, the government has signed on the various international agreements that require us to do away with tariffs within a certain time frame. For example, the EPA requires us to get rid of all tariffs on EU imports by 2014. Madam Speaker, it is incumbent upon me to make this honorable House and the nation aware of what value-added tax can do for the Bahamas. Madam Speaker, researchers have found that the government would be in a better position to fund scholarships, sports initiatives, school upgrading, and other youth organizations. So, Madam Speaker, I can firmly say to the students of Preston H. Albury and Central Eleuthera High, look out, help is on the way. In addition to that, Madam Speaker, according to the Caribbean Webcat.blogspot.com, on October 1st, 2013, Pauline Peters, a newly hired value-added tax consultant and a former head of Grenada Inland Revenue Service, don't mind that, that is not stopping me, who led the implementation of that in that country, told the Guardian Business that while the country remains challenged with reducing its debt burden, the introduction of VAT in 2010 in Grenada has been significantly helpful. The extract went on further to say, Madam Speaker, it has certainly raised additional revenue that can assist in the process of revenue debt. And a dramatic increase on the economy.
Order!
Madam Speaker, Pauline Peters ended by saying there would have been areas that would have been benefited from increased revenue, such as infrastructural development in the country. The social safety net would have been increased, job employment would have been increased, and other financial issues that the government would have been dealing with. Honorable members, these are the facts. Madam Speaker, as I close, picture our children provided with scholarships, books, chairs, pencils, and the necessities for an education. Our country, with value-added tax and gambling taxes, emerging out of debt to begin a new chapter for a better Bahamas. As stated earlier, Madam Speaker, it gives me great pleasure to address you, this honorable House, and the nation on the topic value-added tax. I thank the great people of Central and South Eleuthera for having me represent them. I am finished.
Order! Honorable members, order in the House. Thank you, honorable member. Honorable member for South Beach, what is your point of clarity?
For the honorable member of South Eleuthera, my question to you, sir, is with all this facts that you have provided, seeing as you have all this information, why have you narrowed your research and why has the government narrowed the consultants to only achieving revenue through VAT other than other means? Why as a democracy, we are able to vote in a referendum for gambling, but not vote as a, but not, why is it we are able to vote in a referendum for gambling, but not in a referendum for opportunities or other sources of income to increase?
Honorable member, that is not a point of clarification.
Well,
Please
I'm
be
trying
seated.
to get, Madam Speaker, I'm trying to get clarity on the information provided from Southern Shores Honor Roll.
You, member.
Madam Speaker, I'll sit as I await my answer, please.
As many. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Carmichael.
Madam Speaker, chairpersons, youth parliamentarians, guests of the House, and televised viewers, a pleasant good afternoon. My name is Wellington Ramsey, and I represent the eminent constituency of Carmichael. The provision of programs, services, and infrastructure by the government is important to the welfare of the citizens of the Bahamas. It is essential to the general growth and progression of the Bahamas. However, for this role of government to be financially stable, and function correctly, it is indispensable for citizens to consistently pay their obligated taxes to the state. By doing so, the government can amass the necessary financial resources and needs to meet the Bahamian people. Taxes in the form of import, export duties, excise taxes, stamp duties, and tourism-related tax collectively constitute to about 60% of the total government recurrent revenues. Unlike other countries, we don't impose personal or corporate income taxes. Therefore, the government's income base is extremely narrow and ill-suited to the growing demands and needs of the Bahamian people, giving us need to find a new form of increasing our government's revenue. Modifying of the tax system is therefore inevitable and indeed becoming more dire as each year passes. Alan Tate, who is an International Monetary Fund official and a foremost writer on indirect taxation, noted that countries adopt a VAT because they are dissatisfied in their existing tax structure. He also stated that the dissatisfaction falls into one or possibly all of the four categories. 1. The existing sales tax are unsatisfactory. 2. A customs union requires discriminatory border taxes to be abolished. 3. A reduction of other taxations is sought. 4. The evaluation of tax system is not being kept pace in the development of the country economy. As more of the Bahamas trading partners move over to the form of indirect taxation, the pressure on this country will change and gain momentum. Perhaps this time is rapidly approaching. A review of the history of implementation of VAT in the Caribbean and elsewhere reveals that most countries which went through this route did economically impact the studies to determine whether relevant economic indicators were favorable to its imposition. Using Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, and Jamaica as examples, some of the considerations uppermost in the minds of authorities included the likely impact on the industry sectors, the likely impact on the price of the basic food items, the likely impact on tourism, the level of gross domestic product, GDP, the amount of revenue needed, the standard rate necessary to achieve the revenue needed, the number of all types of goods to be zeroed, rated, and services should be exempted. In the case of the Bahamas, it is not likely that VAT with an acceptable standard rate of about 7.5% would compensate for the removal of import duties and other consumer taxes, if imposed only on goods, whether imported locally or produced. However,
VAT being a tax on goods and services will be a broader base falling on goods and services that will had up until now to have been not taxed. It is the broad base and that makes VAT so effective as a revenue earner. In Trinidad and Tobago, a person making annual gross sales of 100,000. In Jamaica, a person making 144,000 in annual gross sales. And Barbados, persons making 60,000 in annual gross sales are registered for a VAT system. However, the law does set conditions under which persons operating below the threshold level can be registered. With VAT, in effect, it will generate more crime and a financial strain upon the people of the Bahamas in these now called hard times, causing people to compromise their personal integrity, committing crimes such as pilfering, armed robbing, and stealing, and so forth, which you already face a dire situation in the Bahamas. Madam Speaker, seeing that VAT will be implemented in January 1st, 2015, I feel as though we need to prepare for this beautiful disaster. I do agree that with implementing a new form of taxation, but in a way such as it be fair for the people of the Bahamas. For instance, bringing forth income tax, whereas citizens of the Bahamas will pay taxes based upon their salaries, which not only being fair in taxation payments to all, but actually in the terms of increasing revenue.
Honorable member, your time has expired.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. As many. Honorable member
Golden Isles.
of Golden Isles, what is your point of clarification?
Point of clarification for a member of, I think it was South Eleuthera, it was. The illusion of,
Honorable member,
what happened?
honorable member, South Eleuthera has already been established. He has already gone. Your point of clarification will be dismissed. As many. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Montague.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise once again on behalf of the wonderful people of Montague constituency in support of the introduction of value-added tax. We believe that this introduction is significant to the development and welfare of the country. Honorable member from Riamacroa alluded to the fact that the current tax structure is too narrow to support government business. This is true. Those that oppose may believe that VAT will decrease the national debt. This is not the aim of VAT, Madam Speaker. VAT, if you refer to page 9 of the white page on tax reform, which states that VAT will secure asset to adequate revenue for the future. It is also important to ensure that the deterioration of the dollar is not a drastic one. Value-added tax will also increase the lending ability of the Bahamas, which is essential in the near future, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Bahamas has many projects that are mainstream. For example, the new industries like Bahama, which will demand an amount of energy without a sustainable amount of borrowed money made available by VAT. This would be impossible. Our VAT should also be compared with aspire to be compared with systems such as Finland and Singapore, who are quietly becoming economic powerhouses of the world. VAT, therefore, is youth-orientated. It will be a great asset that will be set on a shelf that will be used to manipulate it to increase the money that will be stipulated back into the youth in the future.
I am sure that there are some questions that my constituents would like to ask on VAT. First of all, they would like a more transparency of the VAT system, where the money is going and who is spending it. They would also like for the youth to be in control, a youth council to be developed so that youths will always have a vision of where this money that has been set aside for them will be going. And if the design of the plan is to be implemented by January, there's a few questions that must be asked. Does the average Bahamian understand and concur with the VAT system? And the most important question, is there adequate trained staff along with effective information technology services? One of the major problems with countries that have failed with VAT is their projection of registered companies were too low. Madam Speaker, VAT is the most preferred choice and most transparent of all of the taxations offered to the Bahamas. It is also important that we sign on to the VAT tax system so that we may be eligible to sign on to the WTO. The WTO will help to stimulate or improve the trade system of the Bahamas that will have a trickling effect through the Bahamas. Montague agrees with the introduction of VAT once it remains at 7.5%. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Asmini. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member of Pine Ridge.
Speaker.
VAT? VAT? What is that? Most people, I am sure, may know by now that it is abbreviation for value-added tax. But for most of us, that is all we know. Exactly what does this mean and how is it going to work is still a mystery to most. For some, they see that VAT is a ghost coming to hunt us beginning on January 1st, 2015. But what is VAT? According to a pamphlet produced by the VAT Department of the Ministry of Finance, VAT or value-added tax is a broad-based consumption tax that will be applied to most goods and services bought locally or imported into our country. It would be included in the price to most goods and services that we buy. The tax will be collected by businesses and passed along to the government. Why do we need VAT? Madam Speaker, this is the question on many persons' minds. Again, according to the information from the VAT Department, VAT would provide a stable source of revenue and support the broader strategy to reduce the government's debt burden. They say that less debt will free up more resources to spend on basic services and such a police protection, education, medical facilities, and social services. Madam Speaker, in an economy where so many persons are currently finding it hard to make ends meet, it keeps on the lights or provide food on other basic needs for their families, the last thing they want to hear about is tax. VAT has therefore caused much controversy and heated debates in our country. However, Madam Speaker, ready or not, here VAT comes. So what can we do as citizens? Educate ourselves. Knowledge is power. Many of our fears about VAT may be because we do not know enough about it. We need to attend the various education sessions that are going on and do our own research. But then again, Madam Speaker, even the people who are supposed to be the ones in charge of educating us seems to be confused in some cases themselves, especially as it relates how that can affect my good people of Grand Bahama who are licensees of Port Authority. This was shown in a recent town meeting about VAT held in Freeport where many questions were unanswered. Prepare ourselves. Many of us do not like the change. It is hard sometimes for us to adapt, but we live in a changing world. So whether we like it or not, we must go with changes sometimes. Are we all going to pick up and leave the country? Madam Speaker, I think not. So let's mentally prepare ourselves by facing the reality that that is coming, and also prepare ourselves by learning the budget and monitoring our spending habits. Madam Speaker, to sum it all up, whether we agree or disagree with the implementation of VAT, as I said before, ready or not, here VAT comes. Personally, I do not think it's going to be as scary as many people believe. Right now, it may seem confusing as theory usually does, but once we become more educated and see it from a practical side, once it is implemented, I'm sure we will quickly adapt. I only hope that VAT will generate more revenue and decrease our country's debt as the government anticipates, and that we, the citizens, will see the benefits for this and our country's basic services. Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many. The House recognizes the Honorable Member for Central Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Once again, I am here today on behalf of the wonderful people of Central Grand Bahama, specifically representing the vibrant youth of my constituency. It is still with the utmost respect that I represent them to the best of my ability as it relates to the value-added tax. We have been made to understand that VAT is a broad-based consumption tax that will be applied to most goods and services brought locally or imported into the country. Also, that it would be included into the price of most goods and services that we buy. My opinion on VAT is a positive one. I am convinced that it is a necessary means for our government to better the country. The money that we put into all goods and services bought will in return be added into the country's revenue. To support this statement on my opinion about VAT, I will refer to the former State Minister of Finance, Mr. Shivago Lang, about his presentation given to the members of the Rotary Club in Freeport, Grand Bahama. Mr. Lang assured the Bahamian nation that other countries such as Barbados, Guyana, St. Kitts and Nevis, and Trinidad and Tobago have joined the bandwagon in implementing VAT, expressing the reason behind it all. Some reasons are: governments needed more revenue, which was not being supplied by their predominantly income and sales tax sales. Governments found that their tax bases needed to be broadened in order to collect greater revenue. And value-added tax broadens that base while producing a neutral tax for business but a self-policing system through the invoice credit payback system that a sales tax could not provide. These are reasons that we can agree with as a country moving forward together, and by any means necessary, we will. As I continue, VAT is projected or will likely take the strain off of tourism and banking, and will also allow an increase in the economy and create a boom in jobs for both the government and the private sectors. The Inter-American Development Bank studies on the economic and social impacts of VAT in the Bahamas states that the introduction of VAT, alongside other reforms to reduce the public debt, would have positive economic and fiscal benefits. These returns would be magnified further if accompanied by a temporary but well-targeted increase in public spending on programs to assist the poor and vulnerable in society, as the current government already intends to. From the government's Ministry of Finance, we are assured that VAT will provide a stable source of revenue and support the broader strategy to reduce the government's debt burden. It is further said that less debt would free up more resources to spend on basic services such as police station, education, medical facilities, and social services. Obviously, the increase on goods and services will take some adjusting, but eventually it will become the norm and the country will reap the benefits. It is my opinion that VAT is indeed inevitable, and in the interim, it is incumbent that we prepare ourselves by becoming knowledgeable regarding the issue. I believe that the projected 5% increase to our cost of living can be subsidized by implementing wise spending and good stewardship. Madam Speaker, I feel it's time fear should be put aside and reality should be faced. How many times will we postpone the date? As a nation, we must stand together, embrace what is about to happen, and do whatever it takes to make this value-added tax work for the best of us. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Asmini. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Marathon.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker. I again rise on behalf of the citizens of Marathon to speak on this timely issue of value-added tax. Madam Speaker, I know why VAT has to be introduced. Our trade agreements obligate us to, and I understand our government's position. It receives the majority of its revenue from custom duties, but fails at collecting it effectively. About $400 to $600 million is outstanding in real property tax, but responsibility must be taken. All governments have failed in adequate collection of taxes. It would be remiss if I did not say that in order for the people of Marathon to feel comfortable with the implementation of VAT, we need to be convinced that our government will ensure that there is aggressive monitoring, measuring, follow-up, and compliance to effectively coordinate VAT. What do I mean by this? It is said that VAT will secure an adequate revenue base, and I ask, from who? The net for revenue capture will be widened, but will anemic collection strategies or corruption result in the elite avoiding payment or prosecution? Madam Speaker, I am not convinced that there's a strong message being sent by the chronic tax evaders that your ducking, diving, and dodging ends here and now. Our people desire better, deserve better, and demand better. I simply request that our government utilize stronger fiscal responsibility. Don't spend more than what you have. A possible delay because public education isn't clear. Introduce a Freedom of Information Act. Shareholders of a company expect clarity around how their money is being spent. So don't the Bahamian people deserve this as well? And although I voice my concerns around VAT, I do have ideas of how the government can spend it. Direct some VAT to digitizing every government agency to reduce backdoor deals and increase transparency. Direct some VAT to revamp public transportation. The current system is complete rubbish. It is inaccessible for people with disabilities and the elderly, and I can tell you when VAT hits the gas station, you can believe the amount of people that will require public transportation will balloon. Invest in education. Get COB to a university status. Build new schools and invest in the current institutions. This will have major implications for the productivity, innovation, and creativity of Bahamian firms and the wider economy. All areas where it is suggested that this nation is not as competitive as it might be. VAT and BEC. Do I need to say more? Get us on renewable energy. Invest in healthcare, especially preventative health, given that cancers, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and other non-communicable diseases account for 75% of deaths in the country and account for 80% of expenses for treatment through the government's prescription drug plan. Issue VAT credits to vulnerable families. I use Canada, for example. VAT credits are not just given back to businesses, but also to low and moderate income families. VAT credits for energy, BEC anyone? Some from sales tax, for child benefits, and for family benefits. And lastly, tackle the debt. Madam Speaker, I didn't want to take up much time here. I'm not against VAT. I'm just against a cycle of inefficient tax collection and corruption. Create equity in the collection of taxes, and this member will be your biggest cheerleader for VAT. I sit down.
Thank you, honorable member. As many. The chair represents the honorable member for Exuma.
Good afternoon, once again. I am here to represent the island of Exuma, the gem of the Bahamas. Child, I'm going to pick up my food stamp from social services right now. I need a scholarship from the government so I can further my education. The government needs to build more schools, fix the roads, lower electricity bill, and I can go on and on. Madam Speaker, if you have not noticed, we as Bahamians depend on our government for a lot. Adding to this strain on the government, there is our public finances, which is in a state which, if not dealt with, will eventually lead to international agencies further downgrading the government's credit rating. The government is currently being pulled by the demand of the people and their debt. As such, being able to fulfill their responsibilities as a result of lack of funds. Therefore, the government needs a source of revenue that can bring immediate result. And the answer, value-added tax. VAT will show results at a much faster rate than investing in possible viable industries. Madam Speaker, taxation is definitely needed. Imagine the feeling of being very close to being debt-free and the government being able to do more for the Bahamian people. Who knows, they can finally build an appropriate international airport for Exuma. Madam Speaker, who in their right mind would be willing to pay a tax if there would be no benefits and if it is not necessary? Madam Speaker, VAT is indeed necessary, and without a doubt, there will be benefits. This crisis needs to be addressed, and addressed now. Just look, the government has cut some of the benefits of civil servants. Do you think this issue should be taken lightly? Madam Speaker, many people are free riding, which is where people receive benefits without directly being involved in the transaction. Perfect example, government schools and medical facilities. After the government is providing all of these privileges, are you complaining to pay a little tax to contribute to the debt that was spent on bettering your country? Many people doubt the government, and I understand why. Every government has some form of corruption, and our government is no saint. They are known for overspending and mismanaging the public funds. But I will tell you, there won't be any hands going in that cookie jar because they will be placing a central revenue agency that will allocate the funds generated from VAT so that they will be allocated responsibly. Madam Speaker, whether we like it or not, we will pay one way or another. I recommend VAT. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. As many. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Killarney.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is with great pleasure that I address the audience today on the resolution of value-added tax on behalf of my constituency. My views on VAT are simply this. This country is not prepared for such a taxation to take place during a slowly increasing economic upturn. Madam Speaker, if I may address the immediate fact that unemployment is at an all-time high in its double digits, some citizens of this great country simply cannot afford their everyday lives. How then can they afford VAT? How then, Madam Speaker, are we to turn and squeeze the Bahamian pockets from which they already lack? This bill, although not feasible to the current economic situation in this country, has successfully been carried out, and I admit, in many countries, such as those that were mentioned earlier. However, most countries that use VAT have larger populations than that of the Bahamas, so they are able to sustain such taxation. Madam Speaker, this bill will encourage Bahamian people to import their goods instead of sourcing it locally, as it will be cost efficient to do so. Why then are we forcing the hand of our people to take monies out of our country? To me, this is hazardous. Local business owners, most importantly, the small man, already suffer from high electric bills, duties on goods, and other day-to-day expenses. Not only will businesses have to hire staff to ensure that VAT is being paid and collected to their respective categories, but also to cover value-added tax costs by increasing prices and other on goods and services. Yes, Madam Speaker, one may urge that we need a proper taxation system in this Bahamas. However, the Bible says, and I quote, "There is a time and a place for everything, and right now this is not the time for that." And speaking on behalf of the Bahamian public that barely make enough money to buy bread at the end of the month, the time simply is not now. I seek to place the suggestion that VAT be added to the current taxation that we know as NIB. You know those people are collecting NIB because they are a part of the salaries that are made. If a person is not making a salary, how then can they afford to pay taxes? If in fact VAT be the first thing taken out, then we will ensure that these taxes are being paid. In fact, the resolution of this 2014 Parliament states, and I quote, "And whereas when VAT is introduced and the government intends to reduce custom duties rates on a number of goods, reduce excise tax rates, and eliminate business license tax and hotel occupancy. However, to me, Madam Speaker, this sounds like double taxation and a contradiction. Not to mention that VAT has only to increase in years to come. VAT placed on property tax in a society where banks have two full pages in local newspapers for homes that have been repossessed in this current non-VATable state. Madam Speaker, I close with the same remarks I initially made. My views on VAT is simply that this country is not prepared to take on such taxation during this slowly and upcoming economic turn. Therefore, I stand to oppose the resolution of this 2014 Youth Parliament. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Yamacraw.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to wrap up this debate. It has indeed been a very exciting and productive debate. We have heard the views of all of the honorable members in this honorable House, and we, Madam Speaker, are extremely satisfied that not only those present in this honorable House have heard our views and opinions with those of the wider community and those, Madam Speaker, that are listening through live television. Madam Speaker, I will, however, express my disappointment in the honorable members that have opposed value-added tax. I will encourage them to conduct more thorough research and re-evaluate their opinions. Madam Speaker, you see, in a time where we have an economic downturn, something must be done. It has been examined, and VAT has been deemed the right solution. It was said that VAT is expected to rise over the years, but Madam Speaker, just look at this for a second. If VAT is introduced at 7.5%, and it is seen to have made a considerable contribution to the economy, then why should it be increased? Where are the facts that it will be increased? I will continue, Madam Speaker, by saying, do you want a lower dollar value? Do you want to continue borrowing? Do you want to continue to have a poor credit rating? If that's what you want, then leave that off of the table. But if you want a striving economy, a more efficient economy, and an economy where development is important and is happening, then the solution is value-added tax. Some said in this honorable House, Madam Speaker, to reduce expenditure. But if we reduce expenditure, then how will nation development increase? Madam Speaker, I continue by saying that the honorable member for Cat Island spoke about utilizing our raw materials. It is a good idea, honorable member, but you still need revenue for the workers, for the materials, for the tractors that are needed for digging up. Anything other than tax will require revenue. Madam Speaker, it was also spoken about countries who have failed. As the honorable member for West End said, those countries that have failed were in a more difficult and a more horrific economic state than that of the Bahamas. And I tell you that if we continue on this path without value-added tax, we ourselves will be in a worse economic state. Madam Speaker, I will go back to my contribution with this example that I stated. A customer needs, I say, a loaf of bread, which costs $3.55, and wants a soda, which costs 75 cents. The total with the soda is $3.55 plus 75 cents plus the 7.5% value-added tax. The total is $4.62. Pull out your calculators, honorable members. Pull it out. Total B without the wanted soda is $3.55 plus 7.5%. The total being $3.82. Madam Speaker, I think that the point is very clear. From the scenario, the customer would have saved a mere 80 cents, which is even more than the cost of the soda. Madam Speaker, there is something called purchasing power, and I advise the members of this honorable House to read up on it. It refers to the amount of goods a consumer is able to purchase with 1 unit of currency. Madam Speaker, value-added tax calls for consumers to be responsible in their spending. Therefore, it controls the purchasing power of the consumer. If consumers have maximum purchasing power, then the amount of goods a unit of currency can buy is high. This is what businesses want you to have, maximum purchasing power. They want you to spend, spend, spend. Because if you realize that, for example, $100 can buy X amount of goods, then rather of saving a portion, you end up spending the entire thing without caution, and you walk out, leaving a significant portion of your income in the hands of business owners. My people, they do not want you to be responsible. They want you to spend. But I encourage you to be responsible and be cautious of your spending. Madam Speaker, I will continue this wrap-up by saying that we cannot operate merely on the aimless and opinionated views of radio talk shows and malicious talks. We must investigate it for ourselves. Call the Value Added Tax Information Hotline. Here's the number, 242, write it down, 242-225-7280. They have websites. They have, even on Facebook, VAT Bahamas. We must use them. I have it right here. The white paper, many pamphlets that have been produced. Government is spending money producing this information, which you stated you do not have. I further say that the government has provided information and it is now up to us to accept it. If someone is hungry and I provide them with a plate of food and they do not eat it, whose fault is that? Is it mine or is it their fault for not accepting it? Madam Speaker, this is a topic that myself and the people of Yamoussoukro are very passionate about. I am passionate about it because it is a major change in the way we do business here in the Bahamas. I can debate on this topic for hours, but it will, no, it will not permit me. Madam Speaker, I would like to see the revenue collected from value-added tax not only go toward the decrease in debt, but more importantly, youth development, to create access and opportunity for all youth, and to the economic, social, and cultural advancement of this great nation. It is selfish thinking, Madam Speaker, to oppose value-added tax. Rather than speaking ill of the much-needed tax, we should seek information. We should prepare ourselves for change. Ask all the questions you want. The hotline is waiting, and identify the changes that you and your family need to make to sustain yourselves. Madam Speaker, we must come together as one nation to move forward, upward, onward, and together. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Member of Golden Isles, what is your point of clarification?
And it's very important, actually, because the honorable member for Yamoussoukro, I believe, Yamoussoukro was trying to imply that the facts that the value, the rate will not go up. When the government met with IMF, the International Monetary Fund, they wished for us to bring it at 15%. That's not something that came off the ground. That's facts. The Economic Advisory Council that speaks to the Prime Minister, who are Bahamians, advised the Prime Minister that it should not come in at an introductory level at 15%. Rather, it should come at a lower level. I think it was 5, but they came up to 7.5. Also,
Point taken, Honorable Member.
Also, the purchase...
Point taken, Honorable Member.
Okay, well, another...
Please be seated, Honorable Member.
But...
Honorable Member for Golden Isles, dismiss yourself immediately. Dismiss. The question is that the following resolution be agreed. Whereas, if the public finances of the Bahamas does not substantively improve, the government's credit rating will be further downgraded by international rating agencies. And whereas, the government recurrent revenues were forecast to be 1.4 billion, while recurrent expenditure was pegged at 1.7 billion. And whereas there is expected to be a GFS deficit of 462 or 5.4% of GDP, while government debt will be $5.5 billion or more, or some 60% of GDP during fiscal year 2014 to 2015. And whereas the government tax structure is too narrow and is inadequate to support all of the government's services, commitments, and responsibilities. And whereas the government has unveiled a package of tax reforms which is intended to secure adequate revenue based in support of modern governance, establish a tax structure that promotes economic efficiency and stronger economic growth, make the tax system more equitable. And whereas the government has implemented initiatives to improve revenue collection by modernizing Customs Department, real property tax department, the Road Traffic Department, and by creating a central revenue agency. And whereas to achieve these objectives, the government proposed to introduce value-added tax, or VAT, in January 2015 at 7.5%. And whereas VAT is a consumption tax that taxes both goods and services, unlike the present system that taxes only goods. And whereas a number of international and local organizations have recommended that VAT would be the preferable tax for the Bahamas. And whereas when VAT is introduced, the government intends to reduce customs duty rates on a number of goods, reduce excise tax rates, and eliminate business license tax and hotel occupancy tax. And whereas over 140 countries have introduced VAT as their primary means of generating revenue. Now, therefore, it be resolved that this youth parliament supports the introduction of value-added tax at 7.5% to assist in broadening the revenue base of the Bahamas. As many as are in favor that the resolution be agreed will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The resolution be agreed. The chair will now entertain a motion for adjournment. The chair recognizes the honorable member of South Eleuthera.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, before adjournment, I would like to apologize to the honorable member for South Beach for my demeanor and comments earlier. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, Madam Speaker, I move that the business of this 2014 Youth Parliament be adjourned. Sine die.
Is there a seconder? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Exuma.
Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that the House be adjourned. Sine die. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The motion is agreed. The House stands suspended. Sine die. The House stands adjourned. Sine die.
I wouldn't do this.
That was a hard war.
Wow.
thank the staff of the House of Assembly for getting you to this point.